Hey, welcome in everybody. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and today we're doing another laid-back final thoughts episode today on the Reate Exo M. And yeah, it's laid back. I don't have the regular intro. There's no fancy schmancy stuff going on. I just wanted to give my final thoughts. I've had this knife now for the last 5-6 months. I believe that's when I did my last video on it. And it was kind of funny because I did my first impressions, my review. And by the way, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for more of a hardcore specs, first reaction impression, I'll link that right there. This is more of like a long-term sort of reaction. This is what it's like to live with this knife for the last 5 or 6 months. This is, by and large, one of the coolest knives of 2023. And I can say that because there have been some really, really cool knives released in 2023. For example, the 4 knives to the left here represent 4 other knives that I think would fit in that category of one of the coolest knives released this year. The Reate Exo M, this one was released about 5 months ago. And the main difference between this and a regular Exo is that this one has a lock and it's got a pocket clip. And, it's also a little bit shorter, but it's still a carry size knife. This is not what I would consider to be a small knife or a 5th pocket knife. This is definitely a knife that you could EDC without issue. Having carried this quite a lot, I did go ahead and sharpen the blade. The blade is made of CPM 3V. Handle scales are titanium, and this one has the black micarta inlay. Now you might be wondering, Rolls, why did you wait so long to do a follow-up video? Because typically I, go a couple weeks and then I'll do a grill or garbage ranking, or I'll do a follow-up video of some kind, or maybe I'll get a month down the road. 2 reasons actually. One, there's just been a lot of videos to make on other knives. But 2, I don't want to tease people with a knife that is not discontinued, but is hard to get a hold of. And right now is a good time to make a follow-up video on this because these are available again. And if you feel like supporting the channel, I will post some affiliate links down below. But the good news is that finally, after months, these are available and they're not all sold out. That's as of today, September 3rd, 2023. They're not all sold out. Your mileage may vary the longer you wait after this video comes out. So there is that. How do I feel about this knife? Honestly, this is one of the coolest knives released this year for a couple reasons. They took the original Exo design that everyone knew and loved because it was risky, right? Like this out the front style gravity knife that all of your favorite reviewers were saying was illegal, or could land you in jail and all of this good stuff. They improved on it. They added a lock. They added a pocket clip. They made it more of a carry-friendly size because the other one was big enough where it was going to be illegal, not based on the fact that it was a gravity knife, but based on the fact that it had a blade length over, your state's laws. Some states don't have blade length laws for pocket knives, but many do. And that's the funny part to me, is that we're all over here titling our videos most illegal knife ever for views, but the truth is that when it comes to the Reate Exo, most of the time it was just illegal because the blade length was too long. There's actually only one state where the Reate Exo is illegal, and that's Delaware. And when I say illegal, I mean illegal to own. What you do with your knives is your business. So, illegal to own, illegal to carry, I'll let you make that determination on your own. But typically, people are not going to have too much of an issue. During my time with this knife, I actually asked myself a question is, since they installed this lock, is it still considered a gravity knife? And, it really kind of depends upon your state's definition. The really interesting thing about, for example, the state of New York is that many knives could be considered gravity knives if they had a detent weak enough for you to shake the blade open from a closed position. That's absolutely bananas. But I like thinking about that and talking about that because it just goes to show that, aside from how the knife was intended to be used, knife laws can be very predatory. And you might think, oh, well, just because my knife isn't a Reate Exo M, it's not going to be considered a gravity knife. But if you don't look into those things, you might never know. Now, since the last couple of years, New York has changed their laws to be a little bit more knife community friendly, but it is definitely worth looking into because those definitions can actually turn your regular benchmade bug out into a gravity knife, and the whole time you didn't think that it was. Crazy, right? I know. As far as how I like this knife is great. It's so much fun to carry, to use, and some people are going to look at this and say, oh, it's a toy. Like you just like it because it does this. I'll admit there's a lot of enjoyment to be gained out of deploying a knife in this manner. And the more you enjoy a knife, the more you're going to carry it. The more you carry it, the more you're going to use it, the more your money goes to work for you. So yeah, I do think that your level of enjoyment for the deployment is something that matters. And it matters to me. I like enjoying my knives. Something that a lot of people asked initially, and I think the question has been answered, but does this knife rattle? From a closed position, if I hold it by this top piece, sure, but it has to. There has to be some give for this part of the handle to swivel up so that the blade can release. Now, in a fully open position, does it rattle? Yes. And again, that's for the same reason. Now, some people are going to be really annoyed by that, but I'm about to tell you why that's a non-issue. It's a non-issue because if you're pulling your knife out to use it, you're going to be holding it. And guess what? When you hold it, no rattle. No rattle because your hand is holding everything closed and tight. The way that this knife is designed is going to have some rattle to it because it has to. I mean, at least currently. Can they improve on this to make it even tighter and closer and still open and be functional as it is? Sure. But is there rattle? Yes. And if you're someone that holds your knife like this, then sure, there's rattle. For everyone else in the world that holds your knife like this, it's a non-issue. Is there play? Sure. It's a very insignificant amount. This knife is actually really good for EDC. The CPM 3V does not have the most amazing edge retention, but it's actually very tough. And that's fantastic because that means that you can actually put this thing through some abuse. Now, early on, I had a question about, how sturdy is this lock? Is this lock going to fail? It has never failed on me. It's a very simple design. And for most people's purposes, it's going to do just fine. It's not going to fail you in a spine whack test. It's not going to fail you when you're cutting through cardboard or when you're cutting rope or, I've jabbed this thing straight into wood blocks and trees and stuff just to test this lock, and I had never had any issues. It would have been better if I got it on camera, but I didn't. I can't believe it's taken me 5-6 months to make this video. This is such a cool knife. And for those of you who are on the fence and waiting for the new release, I can tell you that this is definitely one that I can suggest for not just for your collection, but also for your pocket. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space in your pocket. This form factor is very pocket friendly. I will say this. I have no idea why they thought this dome screw was a good idea. It blows me away that they thought that was a good idea. I don't have issues in regular jeans, but if you wear Carhartts every day, that might be a screw that you want to replace with a flathead screw. Some of you might be saying, well, will Reate send me screws? I don't know. But I do know that you can find Torx head screws of all kinds, and of titanium if that's your thing, or hardened steel if that's what you prefer. If you go to knife maker supply websites, just Google knife maker supply on Google, and Google will tell you what sites sell those things, and you can find replacement Torx screws no problem. This hasn't been a huge issue for me personally, but I could see it being an issue for some people that wear pants made of thicker, like super thick material like Carhartts. If you don't wear Carhartts, not going to be an issue. I haven't had any issue with my regular jeans, and so for most people, I don't expect them to have an issue either. There are new variants of this. This one being in titanium and 3V. A lot of people weren't fans of that. They didn't like it. They said 3V, but it doesn't have the edge retention of Godzilla and blah, blah, blah. Guys, every steel has different properties, different compositions. 3V is extremely tough. It's a great tool steel. So I'm going to say this: if you're someone that really likes to use and abuse your knives and throw them around and do more dumb stuff with them, the 3V is actually great. It will hold an edge decently well. I did sharpen this one because I was using it. I still do use it. And in fact, I did a poll recently on my community where I asked people, if I was to do a dedicated carry for September, where I carried a knife, single carry September, which knife would it be? And the Reate Exo M, as of right now, is winning. So you may actually see more content on this knife coming soon for where I carry this knife all month long. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. That said, if you do prize edge retention over everything else, the good news is that they did come out with some in LMAX, which is pretty cool. So LMAX is going to have much higher edge retention than CPM 3V, but it's not going to be as tough. It's a trade-off, right? I really enjoy this knife because it is fun to carry. I like showing it to people who are not afraid of knives. But the downside to that is that the opposite type of people end up obsessing about this knife for the wrong reasons. For example, you show this to a non-knife person and you deploy it like this, they're going to feel threatened. I've had people respond very negatively to this knife because they see it as a weapon when in fact it is a tool. So I will say this: if you are in a sensitive environment where you're surrounded by snowflakes who will melt easily, probably not the knife to carry. You don't want to have, too many of those conversations before it becomes a problem. I don't know why people see this as a weapon when in fact it's just a tool that's really easy to deploy and engage and use. The one-handed operation of this knife is really, it's not only addictive, but it's really easy. Something that's easy to do, however, is to forget to use this lock. And the lock is kind of fidgety in and of its own right. Have you seen those fidget toys out there where they're basically just sliders? And there's a whole lot of people that really enjoy those. I'm not someone that spends any money on that, but I can see if you're into those fidget toys, like the sliders and the clicky things and just the bobbles and stuff, this lock is going to be fidgety in and of itself. That's not why I appreciate it, but I can see other people appreciating it for that reason. This is a knife that I am so glad is in my collection because it's something that I do have to hide away in a deep dark corner. Otherwise I'll carry it more often than everything else. And I mean, I mentioned that there was some really good knives released this year, like the Chavez Redemption 229 Kickstop. Absolutely love this knife. Or the Midgards Messer Little Beowulf. This is another knife that I absolutely love. And then can't forget, of course, the Vosteed RS-KAOS, also formerly known as the Mayhem, with the first version of a compression lock that wasn't made by Spyderco. And even the Winter Blade Co. Mirage, first magnet assisted knife ever. Keep your eyes peeled for a follow-up video on this, because it's definitely in the works and it's a sweet knife that I really like. But this is my point. This is a knife that I have to hide away, because if I don't, I'll carry it all the time, and there are so many great knives to carry. And I've had the same issue with this knife as I've had with these knives, and that is that I do have to put them down so that I carry other knives, because I like to carry everything in my collection. And it's really easy for a knife like this to become your primary carry and just forget about everything else. Same story with all of those. So I'm here to tell you guys that if you're on the fence about it, buy one. It's extremely enjoyable, and these are knives that will last a long time. Reate does an amazing job on their fit and finish. It's just top notch, with the exception of that dome-headed screw, which is an oversight. Everything else about this is great. This is a knife that I don't feel bad about using, about throwing in my pocket. It feels good to use. If you're someone that carries knives primarily to fidget with, you'll be happy with it. If you're someone that's very religious about using and abusing your knife, this will work as well. And now for those of you who said, I just don't like CPM 3V, they do have LMAX versions available, and I will link them down below. I really like this knife, and it's a great knife. It's photogenic. Hopefully you've enjoyed my photos that I've been popping up on the screen so far. If you do, make sure to follow me on Instagram, because I do post my photos of my knives and the places I take them. I do post them there. So if you appreciate good knife content, make sure you do that. And if you've enjoyed up to this point, make sure you're hitting that like button, and also make sure to click on the video that pops up next.